Hello, friends. In the words of Robert Sherman, singer, hello, mother, hello, father. Here I am at National Treasures Interviews. National Treasures. It's good, isn't it? Done a little song lyric this week. National Treasures is the podcast equivalent of a nice cup of tea and a biscuit, not a Garibaldi. They're total dog shit. And this is the video interview series of a nice cup of tea and a different biscuit. But still, not a Garibaldi. They're dog shit. We're talking pink wafers. We're talking bourbons. We're talking custard creams. I am Will Duggan, and this is my friend, co-host, confidant, consigliere, Laura Lex.
Hiya.
Hiya. I'm doing a good one this week, aren't I?
It's thorough, isn't it? There's a lot
It's
to
thorough.
it.
The point is, welcome to National Treasures Interviews, the interview series where Laura and I, who normally do a podcast where we have Lovely Days Out, and no longer can, are bringing Lovely Days Out to you with special guests each week. We are having a great time. Yes, Laura.
How much coffee have you had, Will?
That
was a lot.
I get up very early in the morning.
You do. How's the testing been today?
Very poor, very boring. Too many people turning up for a flight an hour before it takes off, asking for a test that takes an hour and a half to do. They get angry at me because they thought they could just wander willy-nilly across national borders during and I can't stress this enough, global pandemic.
I'm in a better mood today. Mackie had her stitches out yesterday. I actually got to take her on a tiny walk today. So
is she walking on the leg okay?
Not really, but we see the dog physiotherapist. And she's making progress. So
how is that adorable patch on her left hindquarter that is completely bald?
Oh, it's coming back in silky smooth. It's nice. And now the stitches are out, I feel less ooky about it. So it's less like stitches, and this is so dumb, but stitches, they really have just sewn the skin together.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's gross.
I'd say famously.
Yeah, and now that they're out, I feel a little bit better about the wound site. So, speaking of wound sites, that's a terrible segue, isn't it?
Poor. Very poor.
This is why I'm not Claudia Winkleman. Speaking of wound sites, do you know a site where a lot of wounds have taken place? A castle. That was good. And today we're going live to a castle, to an actual castle, because today we are talking to the lovely Lloyd Glanville, who is the front of house manager at Cardiff Castle. Now, back in the before times when we were doing the full normal podcast, we had big plans to go and spend the day with Lloyd, and he was going to show us around the castle, and we were basically going to get like a VIP tour because we're very cool and special. But then COVID paid to that. But we will be going there for a future series, hopefully series 2. But we thought in the meantime, let's get lovely Lloyd on the interview series and grill him about the castle. And look at this. Look where he is. What?
That's not a background. That's not a background.
It's not a background. Hi, Lloyd. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
This is so exciting. So that's not a background. What room of Cardiff Castle are you in?
No, so I'm sat in what is the 15th century house now in the banqueting hall, but all of the decoration you see is part of a big Victorian Gothic revival redecoration of the interiors. So I'm in the Victorian banqueting hall.
Amazing. And so tell you...
Where are you, Laura?
Me,
what room are you in?
I am in the 1970s comedy club loft revival of my house. What about you, William Duggan?
I'm in the one room that my flat has that isn't a bedroom or a toilet.
Ooh.
I'm in the room.
The only room. So, Lloyd, how long have you worked at Cardiff Castle?
I've worked here 12 years now. Like most people who grew up in Cardiff, I knew there was this big castle in the middle of the city, but I didn't know much about it. And I got a job as a tour guide 12 years ago and suddenly discovered all this amazing Roman, medieval and Victorian history on my doorstep.
Yeah.
So you are a Cardiff boy yourself?
Yeah, lived here all my life.
Cardiff's wicked. I love Cardiff. I've not been to Cardiff Castle, though. I was trying to think what castle I had been to. I've been to Caerphilly Castle, I think, which is not a million miles away from Cardiff, is it?
No, it's only a few miles away. And at the same time, the Marquis of Bute was redeveloping this. He also owns Caerphilly Castle as well. There's a lot more land in the area, so there is a connection.
There's a lot of castles in one small area.
Yeah, there is a lot. There's always that claim that Wales has more castles per square foot than any other country in the world, which I'm not sure how true that is, but there's certainly a lot.
As soon as you start researching castles in Wales, a lot of it is like this castle was actually there to suppress the Welsh rather than Welsh people's castles. Does that change the way you feel about them as locals and as Welsh people, or are you just like, nah, they're ours now, we're proud of them?
I think if you ask most people now, they'd be proud of them. But yeah, you're right, the history is quite mixed. I mean, almost the only times in history Cardiff Castle was attacked, it was by the Welsh, because it was owned by some, Norman lord or some sort of
you can say English, it's fine. We know.
Or an English lord. And so it's only ever attacked by locals, like Ebor Bath or Llewellyn Bren or Owain Glyndŵr, who were trying to kind of take back control of Cardiff. Owain Glyndŵr levelled Cardiff to the ground, burnt it to the ground when attacking to try and oust the local lord. So, I think there's a strange connection with it. And I mean, it's almost never been owned by a Welsh person. It's been owned by the Normans or the Scots or the Romans, but I think people love it for what it is now. They can appreciate it for what it brings to the city as a cultural site.
Yeah. So give us a quick backstory then. Where are we starting with this castle?
So we always say there's 2,000 years of history. So before it was a castle, it was a Roman fort. So The Romans arrived in South Wales in 55 AD, and they built 4 forts on the site, again, to try and shore up support in what was a very difficult place with kind of warring tribes. We're very near the river, so it was a good navigable place on the river, and they built 3 large forts out of wood and then 1 final stone fort, and that's why the castle's got that square shape today, because it's built on those Roman remains. So that's where it starts, really. So before it was a castle, it was a Roman fort. We don't really know how many people were based here, and we don't really know much about what happened to it after the Romans left until the Norman invasion, and then they transformed that crumbling ruin into what we think of as a castle.
What? I'm terrible at this. What? I love Will's already grinning, like, what stupid questions coming out of my mouth now?
No, I was grinning that you, in an interview that you were conducting, you put your hand up. Put your hand up. I've never seen Parkinson or Jimmy Kimmel. I'm really sorry. Quick one.
Maybe they should. Then it would be politer. What's the time gap between the Romans and the Normans in this country, in sort of Wales, the UK?
So
Britain?
the Romans would have left in about the 5th century. I mean, they didn't kind of leave all in one day. Most of them either stayed behind or forces gradually moved back. But and then obviously the Roman invasion in the 11th century. So there's quite a big gap there of 500 years at least that we don't really know what happened on the site, other than that Roman fort started to crumble a bit.
What's your favourite era of the castle? Is it the Norman bit?
I mean, I've always had a fascination with the Romans, but there's so little of what they left behind here to see that I think this crazy house that I'm stood in now with all this Gothic Victorian architecture, I know it's not to everyone's taste and it's a strange time, but I just think all the rooms are so endlessly fascinating. It was the 3rd Marquis of Bute and his architect, William Burgess, who redesigned all these. And they were quite eccentric characters, and they had, crucially, a lot of money. And they just redeveloped all these interiors into this kind of Gothic fantasy castle for themselves. So I think even despite the medieval and the Roman history, I still think most people, when they leave here, the bit I'm stood in now is the bit they remember, the kind of stately home aspect of it, just because it's so wow and over the top. I mean, look at it, it's crazy, it's ridiculous.
So it's Victorian Gothic revival mansion.
Yeah, so it's essentially the Victorians trying to ape the medieval Gothic style.
Okay.
And this kind of Gothic revival, it wasn't to everyone's taste, but it was kind of, it came back into favour at the time when the Marquis was redeveloping the castle. And I mean, it fell out of favour again quite quickly. And all this kind of decorated Burgess stuff wasn't really appreciated. All his kind of furniture was sold off in the 40s and 50s for very little money. And now when you buy it back, you have to spend kind of tens of thousands of pounds because the true value of it's been recognised. So yeah, it's Gothic revival. It's the Victorians' attempt to bring back medieval design into their kind of modern life, which is why the ceiling in here is kind of designed to look like a vaulted medieval church ceiling.
You mentioned the Mott and Bailey, and I can never remember which way round Mott and Bailey go. Which bit is which, please?
So the Bailey is the mound. That's the hill.
Bailey is the mound. Okay. And the Mott is the down bit.
The moat.
Is the moat around it, yeah.
There you go.
Well, that's an easy way to remember that now. The Bailey is the mound, like a mound of ice in a glass of Bailey's, and the Mott is not.
No. Why wouldn't you go for Mott Moat rather than Bailey and the drink Baileys?
Because the Mott is not Bailey's.
You've just described that like Michael Scott in The Office when he says green, because green means go, so you can just go ahead and not do it. Like, that's how you've done Mott and Bailey in your head.
No. Okay, I'm going to try and remember that, like stalagmite, stalactite, the Mott and the Bailey. And so the Mott was like the place where the fancy people lived, and then the Bailey was more like the just land around it.
So the keep was really built as a line of defence because you had these outer walls, but then inside there's a central wall dividing the inner and outer green. But then you need something that if the castle's attacked, it's difficult to get into. And so that's why these keeps were built, which is the Norman standard kind of method, is have an outer wall and then a more defensive inner structure. And so there were living quarters in there. They weren't particularly nice. It wasn't really lived in kind of for lords and ladies. It was practicality. There was a knight's hall built on the outer green where kind of anyone defending the castle could base themselves, but it wasn't fine living. It was very much practical to keep any kind of invaders out.
Yeah, okay. We should ask you about this castle that we can see over your shoulder. Is that a fireplace or just a wall decoration? What's going on with that?
It is. So I'm in the 15th century part of the building now, and there were several rooms in the space, but what the third Marquis of BUT wanted was a big entertaining hall. So they knocked down all the rooms to create one big hall. And William Burgess, the architect, his thing, he likes to theme all the rooms. So he had to give the room a theme. And he decided to hark back to the medieval history of the castle. So the fireplace there is supposed to be a representation of the keep in the grounds. And the castle played a part in a battle called the Anarchy, which is a 12th century civil war.
Great name for a battle.
And the man, it is a good name for a battle. and that's one of the people vying for the throne is up on the top of the keep up there. Matilda, she's fighting Stephen for the throne. And the man on the horse there is Robert the Consul, and he's on his horse riding out of the gates of the castle to take part in the Anarchy. And then all these lovely painted walls, these painted friezes around the room, which I can just turn you around slightly, all tell the story of the Anarchy.
Wow.
So you can trace the story kind of around as you look around the room, and all these kind of tell a different part of the history.
That's
of course,
cool.
Stephen, the fourth king after the Norman conquest.
You know the Anarchy well. That's good.
I don't. I have watched the BBC TV show Horrible Histories, and they had a song for the monarchs since William the Conqueror. William, Henry, Stephen, Henry, Richard, John. So I know enough to seem like it, but under any questioning, I will fold like a cheap suit.
I mean, everything I know about it, I know about it from the walls in this room. So, you know,
good way to learn.
Everything on the walls in here is wrong. I don't know it either.
So, here's a question which fits in quite well with the Anarchy. So obviously, this is a battle, and we do get quite sanitized when we think of the Anarchy or any medieval battle. Like, it was real people getting hacked to bits in a very unsophisticated way. How do you think that people like Robert, the guy who's in the jail
Robert
there?
The guy.
Yeah, Robert the guy, yeah. Yeah,
Robert the bloke, you know, the history man.
Robert the gentleman. What's his title, please, Lloyd?
Oh, so we've got there's two Roberts up there, just to confuse matters. So the man in the jail, which you can probably just see, where's that, over there in the prison? Yeah. He's the Duke of Normandy, so he's a son of King Henry I. And he spends a lot of his life locked up, which is why he's represented in the keep behind a nice little jail, a nice little prison.
See you later.
Yeah, so but there's a lot of evidence that he wasn't, that's a bit of a representation, he wasn't confined to a cell because he was still very important and a son of the king. There's evidence he roamed the grounds, and even that he may have learned a little bit of Welsh, which is very unusual at the time. And he lived to his 80s. So, you know,
Whoa.
you can't be treated too bad if you live into the 80s in the medieval period.
Nice.
Shemai Robert.
Very good. Diane.
So, I'll cut that. That was arrogant. So,
leave it in,
not
Will.
of me.
It's what people want from you.
So, Robert, Duke of Normandy, right, in the 1100s. Then you've got the third Marquis of Bute in the 1700s.
So the third Marquis in the 1800s.
So,
the Bute family, in the 1700s,
What do you think that those two men in particular, or any other key figures from the castle's history, would think of Cardiff Castle in its modern state? Like, do you think they'd be happy that it was no longer needed as a military stronghold, everything was a lot more peaceful, or would they think we were all just pure snowflake cucks? Like,
That's interesting. I mean, it is strange. You know, all these places of war and battles are now tourist attractions with, you know, flat whites, and, you know, you have to pay to get in. But
Wi-Fi. They've got Wi-Fi.
They've got Wi-Fi, intermittent Wi-Fi, admittedly, but still Wi-Fi. But it's a strange one. It's interesting. I think the third Marquis in particular probably would have loved it. I'm not sure what the medieval occupiers would have made of it. It was probably all a bit distant, but I think the third Marquis would have liked the idea that it was still here and it was still his vision that was retained, because it was really, all this is showing off. It's a massive show-off space, a place to show off your interests and your wealth. It's still useful now. This room has hosted, you know, Barack Obama and Nelson Mandela and the Pope, and I think he'd probably love it.
I don't know much about this history, but what I did to just sort of skim over and do a little bit of research before talking to you, it sounded amazing. Can you tell us about the Owain Glyndŵr uprising? The sort of, because from the brief bit that I understood, there was King Richard was being really nice to Wales because reasons, and then he got killed by Henry Bolingbroke, who became a King Henry, and then Wales got cross.
We interrupt us once more to come into your ears. Welcome to the advert, as it was, by us, of us, for the National Treasures Patreon. Laura, we have a new patron.
We do. We have a brand new patron. Hello. This patron is so mysterious. They just go by the name Mystic. Ooh.
There's a kebab house in Kettering called Mystic Kebab. Genuinely, best one I've ever had in my life.
Might be run by this person. We don't know, but we're so grateful that Mystic has joined us and become our 10th patron.
Double figure patrons, yes.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you watching, you might be one of our 10 patrons, but if you're not, you know, it's a free thing on the internet. Why should you give us our money? I agree. Will doesn't. He thinks it should be a given. I'm a little kinder. So
I want your money, you freeloaders.
He needs it. We're going to give you a little taster of Years and Years, which is the extra podcast that we do in conjunction with these videos alongside our National Treasures Day Out podcast. We also do this little Years and Years just for patrons. Have a listen, see if you like it.
Bye.
Would you eat a raw chicken for £1,000?
I don't know how fatal salmonella is. I would enjoy
just think
it.
Eating a whole raw chicken would be gross. I think it would feel nasty on your teeth.
100%, yeah. I'd be very sick as well. For how much money, sorry?
£1,000.
Not 1,000, behave. I don't want to brag. I've got £1,000.
How did you get it? Have you eaten a chicken?
Yeah, I'm full of raw poultry. I'm banned from all the turkey farms in Essex. I'm Bernard Matthews' living nightmare, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of medieval history isn't necessarily my area of expertise, but essentially, yeah, so long as there was an English lord in control of any part of Wales, regardless of whether they were kind of favoured by the locals or the king, and they always constantly fall out of favour or get swapped round. I think the kind of Owain Glyndŵr type figure, or Evil Bach or Llewellyn Bren, I think that was never going to satisfy them, because it's still someone else from outside of Wales putting someone in power. And so, you know, there's stories of them ravaging castles and whole towns to try and get their way, which is what Owain Glyndwr did to Cardiff.
So who was he? Was he like a Welsh nobleman or a landowner or just a normal dude?
Yeah, so we describe them as kind of as noblemen, really. You get these kind of people historically would have been described as princes of Wales, and he would arguably be the last Welsh Prince of Wales, because after that title's just kept getting inherited by English people, which, as you can imagine, rubs plenty of people up the wrong way.
Sorry again.
Yeah, I know.
With meaning.
We're still over it, but you know.
That's fine. You've been to
You
Owain
can have
Glyndwr's
them.
house, Laura.
Have I?
Yeah. So Owen, I'm sorry to take over, but Owen Glyndwr
I love it.
He set up like a Welsh Parliament in Machynlleth.
Oh yeah,
And
I
when
knew
you
the
go-
name was familiar.
And when
That
you go to
little-
register your show, or buy some sushi at the Machynlleth Comedy Festival, you do it in the Owain Glyndwr Centre.
I
which
knew
was, I
the
think,
name
his
was
house.
familiar, and I couldn't work out if it was just from going around Caerphilly Castle and thinking, "Oh, I've probably read about him there," because if there's one castle, you're going to get the other one too, aren't you? But yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right,
so Cardiff
he-
is a very modern capital of Wales. In various times in history, it's been, arguably Merthyr Tydfil or Swansea and Machynlleth, where there was a parliament set up.
Yeah,
Where you-
okay. Okay, so he was a sort of nobleman and he was very mad about there being an English nobleman in the castle. Why is this uprising? Was it pretty successful then? Is that why this one's gone down in history as being quite big, or was it just the last one? What are we talking
I mean, they were
here?
all relatively successful
Yeah,
in the
they
sense
were,
that they
Wales.
managed to temporarily overthrow someone. But this is the problem, is it's only ever temporary because you're up against these huge forces backed by kind of the state. And they're always going to come back and reclaim it. So any advances they made were sadly only ever temporary. And they're able to kind of crush the rebellion, so to speak.
I suppose quite sad, really, because not to be bad, but we're still in charge. Like, he's really taken it too far, in my opinion.
I mean, that's why these figures are kind of held up today as kind of these champions, I think.
You mentioned Owain Glyndwr and two other people that I wasn't aware of. Who were the other two that you mentioned?
Oh, so Ivo Bach, again.
It sounds like you're saying Evil Bach, like there was Good Bach, the composer, and then Evil Bach, who went around shooting people.
So Bach is the Welsh word for small or little, so it's basically Little Ivor, is the name. There's a famous club in Cardiff that hosts like indie nights called Club Ivo Bach, and it's named after him. That's why most local people know it.
The Owain Glyndwr Centre is an administration for a comedy festival, and the Evil Bach is where 19-year-olds go to finger each other. I mean, what? Come on.
So actually, it's probably a good chance to say it's quite exciting, really. So that is a part of the castle's history we haven't really done anything about. So 2 days ago, I saw a brand new exhibition. We're about to open a big all singing, all dancing show that focuses on that part of history for like all the family, the real gruesome, bloody, brutal attacks on the castle. Particularly Llewellyn Bren, who was, I think, the grandson of Evil Bach, and who was kind of crushed in a rebellion and ultimately killed. Although the person who killed him, Hugh Despenser, was killed in turn by the king for not treating Llewellyn Bren fairly in trial. So it's such an interesting part of the history we've never done anything with. So we've got this big all singing, all dancing kind of entertainment show that will talk you through the gruesome medieval history of the castle. As soon as the pandemic's over, we'll be looking forward to welcoming people to view that, of course.
Lloyd, other than King, Marquis, Earl, the top dog, what job would you want in a castle in the 1600s? And why, please?
I mean, that's a good question. I think I've always fancied myself as an archer, but I think in reality it'd be a pretty gruesome life. But you'd like to think you'd be pretty good standing at the top of the castle, picking people off with your bow and arrow. I think that'd be pretty fun.
I think that is a superb job, and I think you'd be a wonderful archer. Don't ever follow your dreams.
One meaty
Thanks.
arm.
You've got the keys to the castle. There's got to be a bow and arrow out there somewhere. Go and
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
get going.
Depending on how long the pandemic goes on.
Okay, my question is, what's the most valuable thing in or about the castle?
Good question. It's a tough one to answer. There's a room, actually it's just to my right here, called the Arab Room, and it's inspired by Arabian design. And the ceiling is carved from wood and then completely coated in 22 karat gold leaf.
Whoa.
And then the rest of the room is all very expensive Italian marble with an Indian marble fireplace. So, I mean, just that room alone, for the size of it, it's so impractical. You can't do anything in it. It's tiny, but it's absolutely plastered in the most expensive materials you could ever imagine. So I think I'd have to go with the Arab room.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not laughing at you at all. I thought you'd say, oh, we've got this chair or whatever. What's the most expensive thing in the castle? Probably the room with the gold walls. Fair enough. Yeah, that'll be it.
That'll do it. I love it. I love the idea that, like, I'm trying to think, you know, if I had the sort of money that the third Marquis had, and, you know, I was making something now and I had no sense of shame about spending all this money on my mansion, like, what you could do to a place now that would be the equivalent of this fancy, you know, does this make sense? I don't know.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah, absolutely.
You just, wow, it would be spectacular, wouldn't it?
It's so excessive and over the top. And it is all just to show off, really, because, I mean, it's inspired by Arabian design because he constantly toured the Mediterranean and the Middle East on his yacht. And that's him saying, oh, I saw this chapel in Palermo, Sicily, and I quite fancied the ceiling, so I've recreated it in my house. You know, it's all very showy, offy stuff, but it means we've got this amazing building full of unusual design.
Like really me just being like, I've got the bathroom is based on the Hagia Sophia, and the kitchen is the Oval Office. I've just.
I really like to think that I'm like a proper old school socialist, but then I hear this and think I'd fucking love a yacht. And, you know,
yeah.
Now, Lloyd, you have prepared a little quiz for us.
Okay, well, I mean, I've been very impressed with your historical knowledge so far, so I feel like I have to up the difficulty level. But
no.
So I was going to start with a couple of questions about the Marquis of Bute because he's such an unusual character. So one of his big loves was language and literature. Now, he's very lucky not to have a job to dedicate his life to reading, but in his life, my question is, how many languages did he learn?
Ooh.
So he's a Scottish man living in Wales and England. How many languages do you think he picked up?
7.
15.
Okay, the correct answer is 21 languages.
Whoa! I was
Fucking
closest.
hell.
Do I get the point?
I think you get the point for being closest. We'll go closest for the...
Yeah, like I was going to argue, but I was wrong to the power of 3.
And to think he did that without even Duolingo.
So I'm not sure how you'll get on with this one. So the third Marquis had 4 children. Margaret, John, Colum, and Ninian. And they all had things named after them in Cardiff. And my question was, do you know what was named after Ninian in Cardiff?
Ninian. I'm trying to think where I've been when I've been in Cardiff. We always have to stay at that nasty Citrus Hotel.
On Ninian Street. Now, what was named after Ninian?
And then we go to the Ninian Arms and have the full Ninian breakfast.
I've got a left field guess because I'm behind. I need to go on. You can go first, Laura.
I'm still thinking.
I think the thing in
Hang on,
Cardiff...
can we ask, was this their 4th child? 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th? Do we know where they came in the pecking order?
No, so 3rd, so not the youngest.
Okay, so they've already used up 2 good things then, really.
The thing in Cardiff, named after Ninian, is Cardiff.
Oh, I like your answer. I'm going to say, is it a... Oh my God, my joking brain wants me to say multi-story car park, but I want to beat Will more than I want to be funny.
You're a professional comedian. That shouldn't be your answer.
Oh, I know. Oh, this is why they won't let me on any of the panel shows where it's competitive. Ninian.
Question time.
Ninian Park, Lake Ninian. That sounds cute. The Ninian Bridge. A bridge. I'm going to say a bridge.
I mean, so neither have got it. You were so close when you said Ninian Park because it was Cardiff City's football stadium. Ninian Park is named after him.
Do you know, I listened to a podcast that Ellis James does, and he was talking about, is it Loftus Road? Not Loftus, that's what was this? The Vetch, Swansea City.
That's Swansea City's old ground.
And he was talking about the Vetch and bloody Ninian Park. I bastard me, not Ellis or you.
Well, I was going to take you back to the Romans to see if you knew who the emperor was when I mentioned the Romans settled Cardiff in 55 AD. Thought you could have a stab at an emperor.
Can I ask a question about the emperor?
Sure.
Was he very anti-Wales and the Welsh, this emperor?
We don't really know. It was all viewed as one big Britannia, one big entity, but it took them a long time to subdue the South Wales tribes.
Then I'm going to say it was Emperor, is it Offa? Of Offa's Dyke fame.
I'm going to say Augustus.
I really thought you were going to say it then. You came very close. So it was Claudius who was in charge, and he died during it. So the correct answer really is Nero, Emperor Nero.
Damn it.
I can tell you
Romans
Nero's
are one of
mum's
those
name
things
for
that
half a
I
point.
read endlessly and then don't
Agrippina.
retain a single bit of information about, and it drives me nuts. So the thing that we always ask before we go is if people have loved the sound of Cardiff Castle and all of this sort of medieval history or the idea of the Victorian mansion, what's something that exists at the moment in popular culture? What's a TV show that we could watch or a book we could read that would give us a sense of this era of history?
So it's very difficult. Wales still hasn't been represented on screen in these kind of in the ways that some others might have. So obviously you could go back and look at things to do with mining history. That's probably where most exists. But in terms of medieval and Roman history, Wales isn't really represented on screen. The castle's on TV all the time because it's used as a filming location. So 8 different Doctor Who episodes are filmed here now, and Sherlock and things like that. But in terms of what it would be like to live in either the medieval or Victorian period in Wales specifically, there's very little to look at. It's a strange reference, but I don't know if you know the Disney film The Black Cauldron is supposedly based on Welsh medieval history. I mean, it was critically panned and nearly banned for Disney, but it's a lot of nice Welsh references to kind of Welsh princes at the time. So that's quite a nice reference point.
Just to stress, the Black Cauldron was panned. The country of Wales has got good reviews.
Yes,
good reviews.
Very good reviews.
Universally good reviews.
Amazing.
We've got there's just in terms of the medieval history. So there was a film in 2011 called Ironclad, which was about the siege on Rochester Castle. And after filming, we purchased their working trebuchet. So the trebuchet is now in the grounds. So you can see that in action in the film Ironclad, and that's relevant to the time period, even though again it's Rochester rather than Wales.
Oh,
And
we can't wait to see that when we come and visit you for the podcast day.
Who would you recommend should go to visit Cardiff Castle? Obviously, everyone, that's your job to say that, but people who are interested in what things should go to see Cardiff Castle. Which itches are getting scratched, Lloyd?
I mean, I think that the best thing we've got going for us is that we are a hodgepodge of all different ages. So those people who like the historic house, the kind of grand rooms, you've got that ticked off. But then if you have to bring along some kids who love the medieval hack and slash, we've got a medieval keep, we've got archery, and we've got dungeons they can look at. And then if you love the Romans as well, we've got that. And there's World War II history because the castle uses air raid shelters. So I think probably our biggest strength is that we cover a lot of bases. So hopefully if you come in with a group and you've all got something, a little extra kind of thing each, there's something to whet every appetite, I hope. That's what we think.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And does your ticket get you into the house and the castle bit? Can you see both?
Yeah, absolutely. But then there are specialist tours. So if you're a fan of the Victorian stuff, you can have an expert guide show you around. We do tours of just the clock tower on weekends in the summer. So you can kind of, if you've got a more specialist interest, we can give you a guided tour to kind of cater to you. That's the plan anyway.
Amazing.
And what's your accessibility like for people with different needs? And I appreciate it's 2,000 years old.
So this is the big challenge. So that keep that I mentioned on the grounds, that is unfortunately not accessible. Whereas all of the grounds, so then the wartime tunnels, the battlement walk, that's all accessible. And we do have a lift inside the house to get people who have difficulty with the stairs inside the house as well.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Finally, before you go, what social media can people follow the castle or indeed yourself on for updates of what's going on in everyone's life?
Yeah, so hopefully when we get back to normal, we'll be shouting about some of the things we're going to be doing. So we're at Cardiff_Castle on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, and you check out our Instagram, which is the same, at Cardiff_Castle. And check out cardiffcastle.com, where some of our events for the summer are already up. And that when we fully back open to the public, we'll be talking a bit more about what's changed, like that new medieval experience I mentioned. So keep an eye on all of that, and hopefully we can tell you about what's coming up when the world gets back to some sense of normality.
Oh my goodness, just the word summer and the idea of being in a castle grounds, just wandering about in the summer makes me feel a little bit shivery and like, please happen. I need it. Oh, Lloyd, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for for coming on in the first place, and two, for like doing it from the mansion. It's such a cool scene behind you. It's amazing. Thank you.
I forgot how scary it is at night, if I'm honest. It's a bit creepy. But...
Superb.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd. It was wonderful.
No, it's lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
So that was Lloyd Glanville from Cardiff Castle, which we're going to be visiting for hopefully the next series of the podcast as soon as we're alive and out and well again. William Duggan, do you think you've been a revolutionary back in the day?
The thing is, Laura, I think I would have been a revolutionary in every scenario you give me, but no. No,
you're always mad at people in charge, but can't be quite asked to do anything about it.
The thing is, Laura, I'll probably edit this because if I was a revolutionary, I'm being given ample opportunity right now.
That's what I like about modern times, though, is I can say I'm a revolutionary. Oh, what did you do? I wrote some jokes. I didn't take a sword and go and smash anyone to pieces. I just said some pithy shit and went home. It's great. It's really easy these days. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. We've been Laura Lex and William Duggan. Don't forget to sign up to our Patreon. And if you haven't heard the podcast, obviously download that. And we'll be back soon with some more from the National Treasures podcast.
But before we go, we'll probably give our links
for email. Every time!
That's staying in too. Hey, don't forget what Laura just said. It was really pertinent and good. But also, if you want to talk to us on social media, we are at TreasuresPod on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to send us a nice email, we are nationaltreasurespodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Good night.